Dan Alexander, in the recent Dark Side of the Ring episode on Adrian Adonis, Adrian's close friend was suggesting that maybe 1 out of 100 avoided the partying, no drugs, very little or no alcohol, etc. That, to me, seems very incorrect, because I recall countless times hearing that Nick Bockwinkel, Barry Darso, Bill Eadie, Leaping Lanny Poffo were not part of the party crowd who would get involved in these things. Can Dutch name off anyone who would help prove that estimated statistic wrong, including the names of the people I mentioned? Thank you.
What was the statistic that somebody said? How much did the partying?
Said, apparently, Adrian Adonis's friend said maybe 1 out of 100 didn't party.
Shit. There's a lot of guys who didn't party, believe me. I'll tell you one. I just brought up his name just a few moments ago. Jimmy Hart. Jimmy Hart never partied. Jimmy Hart would go to the town, do the job, go home, or go get a hotel room. I never heard of any partying on his part. I don't think he ever smoked a joint, never took a pill. Here's another one, Jerry Lawler. He never even drank a beer. And the only time I ever heard that he took any kind of a pill was because he legitimately got hurt. And he never did it. And they were a lot more. I'll say, you say the partying, I would, you could almost put Bobby Eaton in there too. He never did it. Coco Ware. I mean, maybe drank a little bit. Or Stan Lane. He may have had some parties himself, but he never followed. And there's a lot more. Here's another one that wouldn't even, if a party was going on, you couldn't drag him into the room. Barry Horowitz. He's another one that, and I know he's never drank, and the only pills he's ever taken are vitamin pills or supplements. And there's a bunch more, but I'm gonna say that statistic is there's a lot of guys in wrestling that did it as a job and didn't go around and party all the time, because that's how you get in trouble. You get in trouble partying with a bunch of guys in a room, and all of a sudden something else comes in there, and then something else. When I see that, I've been in rooms before and they were all partying, and then all of a sudden some more people enter. Whoop, time me to go. And I'd walk out the door. Where are you going? Oh, I got to go make a phone call. I got to do something. But remember I told you about the vibe I have of something's going to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'd have that vibe. Sometimes something would happen and sometimes something wouldn't, but I didn't want to test my accuracy. So I just go ahead and leave. So if something did happen, guess what? I had nothing to do with it. So if you just subtract yourself from any situation, you can't be associated with it, nor can you be blamed for it. So it was more like self-preservation than anything else.
I've got a few more names for you that I just wrote down while you were saying things. Owen Hart, famously. Mick Foley, famously.
No, he never did.
Triple H, he was more or less completely teetotal. CM Punk, of course, as well, who's teetotal.
Yeah, those guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, do what you feel comfortable with, guys. Yeah, Triple H was never a big, I guess, having a party in a room. He may have, but that's not his gimmick. That's not his. I would be surprised to see him at a party, to tell you the truth.
There's also a correlation with the people who didn't party. Quite a lot of these people are also the cheapest people in wrestling, like Owen and Mick and Leaping Lanny and Barry Horowitz. So some of the
Horowitz. I don't know who the cheapest guy in wrestling was. You got to come pretty close. I mean, Mick Foley set the bar pretty high. I mean, Mick Foley was way ahead of me. And Owen Hart, I've heard stories about him that he would go on a trip and he'd have fans pick him up and they would take him around and they would get his hotel room, or he'd stay with them, and they'd get up the next day like they were on the road with him and take him to the matches and take him back, feed him. Jeff Jarrett told me that sometimes Owen would come back say he left with $300 in his pocket and a credit card, he would come back for 310. He would actually make a few dollars on the trip somehow. But and he is cheap. Who else did you say was cheap?
I said Barry Horowitz, Leaping Lanny.
Leaping
all
Lanny.
the Poffos are legendarily
Savage was. I rode with Savage one time, and we had say you went. I'm gonna give the. It used to be back in 3 cents a mile. That's what you would pay. So if you went to Louisville, it's like 150 up, 150 back, 300 times 3 cents. It's $9. But say if it's 320, it's $9.60. And he would want the 60 cents. So instead of making change, I just give him an extra buck or two. I rode with him a couple of times, but that was the way he was, and you accepted that. And he always, see, Randy, when he was in WWF, because he didn't have to they got 2 separate paychecks, him and Miss Elizabeth, but they shared the car, they shared the room, and they shared the expenses. So actually, he was making more money by taking the partner with him and her getting paid too. So they were spending none of his money.
Mm-hmm.
Savage, very cheap.
Very cheap. Oh, Tony Atlas said on the interview that I did with him a few weeks ago that he would spend a lot of money on his clothes, but then he'd refuse to wash them.
Who's this? Randy?
Yeah, so Tony Atlas said that Randy Savage, he would splurge like crazy on, the finery, the livery.
Yeah.
And then he'd just never wash it.
Maybe. I never was around him in his WWF days, but I don't remember him when I was working with him in Nashville and Memphis. I was never in the same dressing room with him a lot of times. So I don't know. Maybe that's right. Yeah. Maybe it's not. I don't know.